So mindfulness meditation has increased enormously in its popularity in recent years, which is a great thing because it means that meditation is becoming very mainstream. It's a very normal thing for people to do, and it's very well integrated now into clinical practice, into psychological therapies, into education settings. But it's really important for people to understand that not all meditation practices are the same. The word meditation is a very generic term, and there are many different forms of meditation. And then forms of meditation generally come into three general categories. The first is concentration category of meditation, where you would have something on which to focus the mind. You would use an object, or perhaps a breath, or even a mantra, it's what we call mantra japa, something on which to focus our mind so that we can stop all those other thoughts coming in, so we can force the mind to be still. Mindfulness comes into a second category of meditation, which is called open monitoring, in which there's less concentration or control of the mind, but it's still a mind training. We're training the mind to come back to the present moment. So we're monitoring our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviours. We're becoming more aware of what's going on in this present moment, on purpose, non-judgmentally. The third category of meditation has been called automatic self-transcending. Transcendental meditation is quite unique in this category. What's often happening in different psychological disorders, such as anxiety, is that we're getting caught up in our thoughts, dragged away by them. We're not in the present moment, rather we're swept away by our thinking processes, believing that our thoughts are fact, believing that our thoughts are real, and so our behaviours and our emotions get dictated by those. We get swept away with the thoughts and caught up in them, and before we know it, we're anxious or depressed. With concentration forms of meditation, they'll talk about how we need to force the mind to be in the present moment, to stop it wandering all over the place. We need to pin it down, keep it still, stop that mind chattering off all over the place. With mindfulness, it's more mind training. We're training the mind, gently training the mind to come back into the present moment, again to have more control over the mind so that we don't get caught up in thoughts about the past or thoughts about the future. While it's true that the mind is always wandering, we've all experienced that, the mind is jumping about, leaping from thing to thing. Actually, the mind is only wandering because it's wandering in search of happiness. It's wandering in search of more satisfaction, greater happiness, greater productivity. It's searching for more and more. And actually, that real happiness lies at the silent level of the mind. A helpful analogy that's been used in the Vedic literature, the ancient Vedic literature, is one of the mind being like an ocean. On the surface level of the ocean, we may see lots of activity, lots of waves crashing around. Now, this is like the surface level of our minds. We're aware of the mind being very active. And from a mindfulness perspective, we are starting to become more aware of that activity on the surface, becoming more aware of those waves, where they're tending to drag us off into. So we start to become more able to be less dragged around, thrown about by those waves. We're less at the mercy of that frantic activity of the surface level of the ocean. If we actually take a dive down and go beyond that active surface level, as we dive down, we get to more calm levels of the ocean. The ocean gets more and more settled, more and more settled, more and more settled the further down we dive, until ultimately we'd reach a silent bed of the ocean. Now, this is the key difference between mindfulness and TM. Transcendental meditation is about transcending, or going beyond active surface levels of the mind. So with TM, it's like taking a dive beyond those active surface waves, that frantic activity going on the surface. We're taking a dive to calmer levels of the ocean, and into stiller and stiller waters. TM is the most effective technique for allowing us to transcend. The mantras that we use in TM are transcending mantras. They're a vehicle for transcending. They're a vehicle for allowing the mind to settle into silence, for taking that dive to subtler and subtler levels of the mind. So it's very easy to do so because the mind naturally wants to go in that direction. So we use a particular sound, a particular vibration, which we rest our attention on, and allows the mind to spontaneously settle into silence towards that greater peace, greater happiness. So the whole point of the process in TM is not to take a dive to the silent depth and then forget about it, come out onto the active surface and take a dive and come to the active surface. The whole point is that we start to integrate those two aspects of the mind. So our active surface level becomes supported by the silent depth, and those waves on the surface become more powerful activity. Yes, of course there's still activity there, but more dynamic, more powerful activity. So different forms of meditation have their different procedures and their different outcomes. Most people will find concentration methods very difficult, very challenging. Actually, it's a common perception of meditation that it's very difficult to do. And this is because most people have an understanding of meditation as being about concentration or control. So many people that have tried meditation will say, yeah, it's really hard, I couldn't still my mind, I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't stop all those thoughts coming because my mind is very active. So one thing that people really appreciate about TM is that it's very easy and very simple. So we don't necessarily have to choose between TM or mindfulness because both work very well together. Mindfulness is actually a part of the TM process. When we teach people TM, for example, we also recommend, after they've learnt TM, that they start to integrate yoga postures into their routine. So they start by stretching with attention on the body. This is mindfulness. We also teach them some pranayama, a breathing technique, which brings the attention to the breath. In Ayurveda, which is the ancient Vedic healthcare system, of which TM is a core component, mindful eating is recommended because this aids digestion. We should bring our attention to what we're doing every day. So with TM, that becoming more aware, more mindful will happen spontaneously, but if we want to work on that more active level, on the level of the thoughts, we can work on that level too. We can work on the level of the surface active waves if we want to, as well as starting to integrate the entirety of the ocean, as well as starting to use the whole capacity of the mind. I taught people mindfulness during my clinical practice as a psychologist. It was a very helpful tool, particularly when people were experiencing anxiety or depression. We would integrate it into our clinical work, particularly integrating with cognitive behavioural therapy to help people start to become more aware of their thoughts, start being more in the present moment. The reason I trained as a TM teacher was because I wanted to take people one step further. I felt that they were really missing something. I wanted people to be able to start utilising the full capacity of their mind and start the process of transcending. The TM is the most effective technique for allowing the mind to transcend, to settle into silence. And this is a very powerful process. When we measure the brain waves and the physiological state, when we practice transcendental meditation, we see a state of restful alertness. This is what's recognised as the qualities of the fourth state of consciousness, transcendental consciousness. We get a state of restful alertness. Mind and body are deeply rested, yet we're not asleep. We're actually wide awake at the same time. We see alpha waves in the front of the brain. There's some activity going on. And we see some activity going on in the core of the brain, which indicates this overall state of restful alertness. And this is a state that we don't see in other forms of meditation. What we also see in the brain during transcendental meditation is brainwave synchronicity. So rather than the brain being in chaos, it's a bit like an orchestra. Rather than the orchestra being all the instruments playing randomly out of tune at different times, we start to see them starting to play in synchronicity. So like this with the brainwaves, we start to see a brainwave synchronicity going on. We get an orderliness of the brain, again, which we don't see in other forms of meditation.